Hey everybody, Pete A. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show with our exciting episode featuring a returning Jeff Pearlman. Now, Jeff is an author. A lot of you have read his work. He writes primarily sports books. He's written about Favre, Donald Trump and the USFL, and his book this time is about the Lakers. And look, here's what Jeff does. He'll talk to thousands of people in and around the story to get all of it. And he's talking specifically about the Kobe and Shaq Lakers of the early 2000s, late 90s. And these teams are remarkable because you've got two of the greatest players of all time on the team and a lot of ego and a lot of not getting along and a lot of championship rings. You've got maybe the greatest coach of all time in Phil Jackson and the greatest or second greatest, depending on if you're a Celtics fan or not, franchise in the Los Angeles Lakers. And so what Jeff does really well is he really just digs into every single aspect of it and takes all of these disparate data points and anecdotes and puts together something remarkable. I know you guys are going to enjoy this episode. If you're at all interested in sports, if you've ever read Sports Illustrated, you've read his work, and I know that you guys will enjoy that. A couple real quick things, announcements. I'm getting ready to go on a trip out to Georgia. First time flying since COVID started and celebrating my daughter's graduation. I wouldn't normally put that out there, but I'm a proud papa and wanted to say, Brenna, great job. Brenna's been on the show many times, and so that's why I'm comfortable talking about her. And just in general, I just wanted to publicly say I'm super proud of my daughter for graduating college with the BS in medical administration. Pretty cool. So I'm going to be out there doing that, and hopefully we'll grab an episode or two on the road while I'm in Georgia. Definitely have some things scheduled. Going to keep it light for me on Friday. John and I are both doing shows tomorrow, so there's plenty of Break It Down show coming your way. And if you're new to us and you came across because you know about Jeff Pearlman, hey, welcome. Welcome to the Break It Down show. 5 new episodes a week at least, if not more. Typically on the live side, the podcast side, 5 straight every time. And just in general, thank you everybody for your support. We've had a great year, biggest year ever, no end in sight to the growth, and just if you could ever do anything, share the show. Tell people about the show. Do what you've been doing because I see that it's working. And if you get a chance, buy a shirt. That helps out. These are the small things that help. We're going to have some changes on YouTube just as soon as I can pull all the levers and record all the videos and answer all the questions. We'll start upgrading that. So if you want to participate, you can help us out directly on YouTube. The show will remain free, of course. But it's a way to support the show if you're into that and you don't want to buy shirts or whatever. Okay. Any other thing else I'm going to tell you is this. We're getting ready to hit 1,000 episodes. I know that's crazy to say that. It's not going to happen this month or next month, but we're well past 900 episodes now, and that is remarkable. So we're going to continue to go forward. We're going to continue to do great things, and I'm always interested in what you all have to say. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Festivus, Happy Ramadan, even though Ramadan Mubarak time is over, but Ramadan Mubarak for when you were celebrating. And just in general, everybody, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. And here comes Jeff Pearlman.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl Amy.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Jeff Pearlman, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Hey, Jeff, welcome back, man. It's fun to have you on. The last time we talked, you were writing about the USFL and what a crazy story that was and how Donald Trump got his fingers all over it and to this day has a grudge against the NFL. Hey, the Three-Ring Circus, man. Tell me about it.
Well, it's a book about the 96 to 04 Lakers, sort of the Shaq, Kobe, Phil Jackson era. Took about 2 years to write. It was kind of a sequel to a book I wrote called Showtime about the Magic era. I sort of viewed it as a continuation of that. Not that you need to read the first book to understand the second. And just I was drawn by the big characters of it all. I mean, Shaq is iconic. Kobe's iconic. Phil Jackson's iconic. Jerry West is iconic. You know, it's just a lot of – I'm always a fan of big figures. So there are a lot of big figures. That's what kind of does it for me. So,
yeah, how did you sort out that whole story? Because Phil is obviously a massive figure. You've got all these titans. You know, I mean, that every person you mentioned is a titan in the NBA history, and they're all in the same building trying to coexist.
I mean, you just report hard. Like it's not intimidating. It's not like you think, oh, it's going to be hard because it's Kobe or it's Shaq. My philosophy generally is you call everyone who is there. So it's not just about interviewing the big guys. It's about interviewing the guard in training camp and the Laker girl and the guy who took tickets at the front and of the Staples Center. I'm a fan of just getting a million different perspectives and then piecing it together and seeing what you have and hoping just filling the cracks, like pieces of information that maybe haven't been filled before, little stories that have never been told before. That's sort of my general way about doing it.
You probably don't realize this, but we just had Andy Bernstein on the show, and we were talking about how you'd even reached out to him. He's like, yeah, he reached out to me for his book, and it just proves your point that you're interested in perspectives. What does the ticket taker give you that you need?
Oh, it's just maybe he remembers or she remembers someone famous walking in the front door, or maybe there's a moment. That's the whole thing. It's all about moments. That's why. It's like, why do you interview a guy who was in camp with the Lakers for a week if he's only there for a week? Well, Shaq isn't going to remember him, but he's going to remember Shaq. That's my general philosophy. I always say, like, Brett Favre plays for the Packers all those years, and there's a free agent running back from Delaware who's in camp for a week and a half. Well, Brett Favre is never going to remember that guy. That guy, he won't remember that guy as soon as he probably never even knew his name. That guy is going to have a moment. Maybe it's just that Brett Favre threw a ball really hard, but maybe it's Brett Favre handing him a candy bar, or Brett Favre saying you suck, or Brett Favre saying, hey man, I want to grab a beer after. Like, who knows? But I always think, like, the people, like the ticket taker hasn't been asked about it, at least not in a public forum, and the free agent running back hasn't been asked about it in a public forum. So I think we make a mistake when we piece together sort of, bits of history, and we only ask the main players, because their memories have been told a million times before. So I like talking to people who haven't talked a million times before.
There's a guy I use as an example of that. There was a guy who almost made the Raiders. He would make it to the third week of preseason and then get cut or whatever. His name was Darren Snelson. And I don't know that he ever played a snap in the NFL, but he was a whisper away from his dream. And even if he got there, it would just be as a guy that's like, oh yeah, I played with that guy, 57, I think, or something. But you're right. That guy, his story, he's going to be like, oh yeah, let me tell you about whomever it's going to be, in the story.
I'm all about that. Because for that guy, here's the thing. For that guy, so let's say he's in camp with the Raiders and it's 2 weeks, whatever, or a week, and he's there, and there's Marcus Allen, and there's Bo Jackson, and there's whoever. Like, those are going to be 2 weeks that he will never forget. And those are 2 weeks that Marcus Allen forgets as soon as they're over. And that makes it really interesting. We all have I ran 1 year of college cross country and track. I remember that season with precision. I don't remember where I left my car keys, but I can tell you everything about my year running college track.
Right.
Other runners on that team, guys who are on for 4 years, great runners, blah, blah, they're not going to remember the detail I do, but it embedded itself in my head. So that guy, 2 weeks with the Raiders, it's going to embed himself in his head, and he's going to have his Raider practice jersey. And whenever his kids have people over, they're going to say, oh, my dad was in camp with the Raiders. You want to see his jersey? Oh, that's so cool, blah, blah. Like, all that stuff. For me, it just matters, and those memories are really, really sharp and usually pretty reliable.
We had Shelley Smith on, and she said something similar. She's won awards for her reporting, and she was talking about when the Magic HIV case story came out, and Magic wasn't talking about it really. That wasn't his thing, and she's like, yeah, but you can talk to everybody around Magic. You can talk to Cookie even. You can get all these people that have intimate knowledge about Magic, and tell the story through their perspective exclusively, and not even talk to Magic, and probably get a story that Magic. But definitely get a story that Magic couldn't tell himself, and likely, in her case, an award-winning story.
Yeah, well, she's a great reporter. And I just think the longer you do this, I almost think what happens is, so when you're new at this, and, when I was a young reporter, let's say at Sports Illustrated, and you were assigned to do, I remember when I was at SI, they assigned me to do a profile of Paul Konerko, the first baseman for the Chicago White Sox, 15 years ago. I flew out to Chicago. And he wouldn't talk to me. And he wasn't a jerk about it. He was like, yeah, I don't really feel like it. So I flew home. I was like, okay, there's no way I would do that now. I would call a million different people who know Paul Konerko, and him not talking to me would actually be part of the story. And it could be really cool. Like, Paul Konerko is the kind of guy who doesn't want to talk to a reporter.
Right.
And then you're just like, you just write this entire story about why Paul Konerko is the kind of guy who doesn't want to talk to a reporter. And that's a really interesting take, a lot more interesting than, well, I go into the cage every morning at 3. So like, it almost like, I'm sure Shelley's the same way. Like it actually, I can't say makes you piss off. That's the wrong word, but like it gets your juices going. Yeah. That someone's like, yeah, I don't really want to talk. All right. You don't want to talk? I'm going to go like Kobe didn't talk for this book. Okay. Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to interview a million different people and I'm going to dig through every clip that's ever been written about you. And I'm going to piece this together the best I can. And it actually motivates you. And sometimes you wind up better off having a person not talk to you because it just drives you hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So the big question I want to ask is, in this collection of Titans, you have 2 guys that are on the court. I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, Jerry, that's great. Shut up. I'm going to get on the court. And then Jerry stops. He stops being a Titan. He might be mad at you later on, but he's not going to play. Those 2 guys got to get along good enough to play. And I'm just curious how they managed it and how often they had to fight, how many times they had to break up and get back together. How did that all go during that time? Because that was tumultuous.
Yeah, I think it's a little overstated that they had to get along. I really do. I don't think the truth of the matter is they were 2 guys with tremendous talent, and so at the same time, you always have 2 of the 5 best players in the NBA on the court for your team. Doesn't matter if they get along. If you watch the Lakers of that era, this is one of my big takeaways from this is they didn't really play that well together, Shaq and Kobe. It's not like their games. It was not Stockton Malone. It wasn't Pippen Jordan.
Right.
It wasn't Cousy Russell. It wasn't any of that. It wasn't Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. Like it was 2 guys whose talents were really unique. But it wasn't like there were a million give and goes with Shaq and Kobe. There certainly weren't many pick and rolls with Kobe and Shaq. They won and they played well because they were great. And they had this supporting cast of role players who knew exactly what they were supposed to do. And there was no third guy trying to be whoever, Kobe too. So everyone knew what they were supposed to do. There's a play from the, the famous Shaq Kobe plays, the alley-oop against Portland, when Kobe gives Shaq the alley-oop, and it's this great moment, and Shaq's running down the court like this, and everyone's going crazy. But I think what makes that play unique, and I didn't realize this until I worked on the book, is that stuff almost never happened. Like it was so usually what it would happen is Kobe would drive, Shaq would be drifting toward the hoop, Kobe would ignore him completely and shoot the ball. It'd probably go in, maybe it wouldn't. There's a timeout. Shaq says, why the F didn't you pass me the ball? Kobe says, get your ass and freaking down low, and I would get it to you. And Shaq says, I will pop you in the head if you do that again. And Kobe will say, I dare you to, you fat piece of. And like they would have this back and forth, and then they would go out and play well. What made that play unique is Kobe actually passed him the alley-oop. Aren't that many alley-oops in the Shaq Kobe catalog?
Yeah.
They were just great players. So there's a really good book that came out earlier this year by Joan Ryan, who I consider her friend, about team chemistry. And her premise is the importance of team chemistry. I don't think, at least in this case, I see it. I don't think they had great chemistry. They were just great.
I wouldn't say that those Rodman Bulls had great chemistry either. They were just really damned good. It's not good chemistry to have to do all that stuff.
Yeah, but they had a very definitive pecking order. See, that was the difference. Like Jordan was the top dog. Pippen never thought he was Jordan.
Right.
Never. And Jordan was never trying to hide and be Pippen. It was Jordan, it was Pippen. Third offensive option was Tony Kukoc. Right. And then it goes like this, right? And that's what it was. Yeah. And Rodman was never trying to score. If he did score, it was almost a fluke. So it was a very organized thing. And with the Lakers, it wasn't, because you had 2 guys who thought they were the A guys, and they both wanted to take the shot in the big moment and thought they should be the centerpiece. So that's a big difference. I agree with you. It's not like Jordan was buddy-buddy with these guys, but everyone knew where they stood.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and Rodman was glad to kick the ball out past the arc. If you got a rebound, you're like, why didn't you just put that back up? Not what I do. No, but Rodman, in a way, for all his weirdness, was kind of perfect guy, a chemistry guy, because there's just no desire to be anything but rebound and play defense. That was it. So great. Yeah. He's sort of my answer to the greatness of Michael versus the greatness of LeBron. And LeBron is one of the all-time greatest players ever. Maybe will be the greatest. I don't think he is, because you could put Rodman on him, and, Rodman broke everybody. He broke Malone. He broke everybody mentally and got to them and moved them from their game. And I don't know that LeBron could handle that, but maybe I'm wrong. What do you have thoughts on that? Or you don't have to comment because it's kind of still going on and everything, but what do you think?
I think number one, I'm not sure the NBA, I don't know how Rodman fits in the modern NBA as far as I think he would foul out of a lot more games. I feel like there's not nearly as much physicality as there was back then allowed.
Yeah.
I also think LeBron is a uniquely unique talent where I'm not sure anyone can really stop him one-on-one. I mean, he's just so freaking big and so quick. Carmelo didn't have the quickness and the ball handling skills of LeBron. So, a lot of my images of Rodman driving Malone crazy are them battling under the boards, Rodman intentionally tangling him up, Malone trying to post up on Rodman kind of being a spider web around him. I don't know. LeBron is a really unique bird.
He is a unique talent for sure. Yeah. Yeah. The alpha and alpha thing, I want to go back to that for a second too. If either of those guys gets the ball anywhere near their spot and everywhere on the court is their spot, they're not giving the ball up very much. I mean, they're going to have a couple of assists, Shaq might kick the ball back out from the post if someone's wide open. He did that well with the Magic. But were either of those guys interested in feeding other players in general? I mean, I know Robert Horry makes a shot and all that kind of stuff, but is that the norm? Or, I mean, my sense of Kobe is that, not that he was a chucker, but he was never going to give the ball up. If he got the ball, he was going to shoot it. And that's his job. And then as Shaq is so close to the hoop all the time, all he's got to do is make a move, and then he's within 2 feet of it all the time. So were those guys, are there games even allowed to cooperate with other teammates in general?
Kobe didn't know. Young Kobe at least was not looking to pass the ball at all.
Yeah.
At all. Just wasn't looking. And I would say Shaq was willing to pass out of the post. The main thing was they just made sure he got the ball so down low. If you look at his positioning, he was so much bigger than everyone else. Now, when he got the ball, he was really deep in the paint.
Right.
So the idea that you're going to get the ball deep in the paint and you're that quick and that powerful and then kick it out to Rick Fox, most of the times didn't really make sense. I mean, the design was get the ball low to Shaq, low in the paint, and then he can physically beat up at, Malik Rose or Tim Duncan or whoever. So he was willing to pass. I mean, if there was an open guy, he would do it. But I wouldn't say either of those guys, their first priority was passing the ball. You know, you knew if you were a Laker. I mean, Glenn Rice kind of learned the hard way. I mean, Glenn Rice came in; he was supposed to be the magical third guy.
Nope.
They didn't really need a magical third guy. It was a terrible fit. They didn't need a guy. The idea was this will be great. Now we have a spot up shooter who's going to. But if you're a spot up shooter and the guy, Kobe, who has the ball most of the time, is not looking to pass you the ball. And you're open all the time because Kobe was double teamed a lot. So Glenn Rice actually had a lot of open looks. And if you look at the old videos, there's a lot of footage of him just standing there sort of like this. What can you do? It's not it couldn't have been the most fun to be playing with those guys.
Yeah.
As far as, so I don't know.
They had a couple of those kind of players too that they brought in along the way. There just wasn't enough ball to go around, once those two guys got their shots. You were going to get 6 points if you were lucky. And maybe you got 12 points in a game, but, that was just through luck. It wasn't through design.
Yeah, I agree. It was it's funny because Kobe, I wrote a lot about, he played on the Summer League team, the Lakers Summer League team his first 2 years. And it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. Playing on the Summer League team with Kobe was probably the worst thing in the world. You're trying to make the Lakers, but you never get the ball. No one's passing to you. Kobe's shooting 100 times a game. It's a nightmare. Yeah, it took a certain type to be comfortable and happy on the Lakers, and the type that you had to view yourself as a role player because that's what you were. You were a role player.
No matter how good you were, no matter how many rings you had. Is that why someone like Robert Horry does all right on those kind of teams? He plays defense and is ready to take a shot, has no fear of it? He seems to thrive in those kind of roles. Yeah,
I think so. I think guys like Horry, guys like Rick Fox, the best guy for those Lakers, bench guy, was a guy who wasn't quite in his prime anymore, right? So you're Rick Fox. You're a couple years past your prime. You were the man on bad Boston teams, and now you're happy being less of the man on great Laker teams. You're Robert Horry. You won championships in Houston. You know what it is to play with a big man. You play with Olajuwon and won rings. You know you're not going to be a guy who averages 20. You're totally fine with that. You're Bryant Shaw. You came into the league kind of as a hot shot with the Celtics. You've started. Now you're content just being a role player. Those are the guys. There's a reason Derek Fisher was a better Laker point guard than Gary Payton. He was willing. He had a role, and he knew he was okay playing it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, you have those role players. So who works harder? I mean, where's the work for Phil Jackson? I mean, obviously you have the two alphas, but really that's their work, in my head at least. So is it Phil just managing the rest of the team to say, this is the design, figure out where you fit in, and I'm going to stroke your back so that you feel better about it until you realize how fortunate you are to get NBA rings?
Well, I think he was a really good coach. I think a lot of it was definitely dealing with the egos and making sure the locker room sort of stayed intact. I think his struggle was he has this system, the triangle, and he has an assistant coach, Tex Winter, who's the master of the triangle. And one of your two stars doesn't really like the triangle and isn't made for the triangle. Like Kobe Bryant was not made for the triangle. Right. He wasn't. I mean, I guess Jordan wasn't either, but Jordan was more willing to adapt to it. Kobe wasn't made for it. And Kobe certainly mentally never thought of himself as a number two. I don't want to be a number two. You don't want to be a number two. Like it just wasn't his part of his plan.
Yeah.
So, I think Phil Jackson spent a lot of time. It's like a lot of his pieces fit perfectly. Ori fit perfectly. Fisher fit perfectly. Fox fit perfectly. Shaq, perfect big man in the middle. And Kobe was like trying to fit this kind of sort of rounded off square, but not totally rounded off into a square, into a square slot. And it was always a struggle because he just thought he was better than the system or thought he should be doing more. Maybe he should have. He's a great freaking player.
Yeah. I mean, is there a system where he can be as successful as he was or more successful? I mean, if it's not the triangle, it's not pick and roll. What kind of a system could he play in where it would suit his style?
No, I mean, the problem, in a lot of ways, this is going to sound weird. In a lot of ways, Kobe Bryant was made to be more like an Iverson, where he obviously wasn't Iverson's level as a ball handler. Iverson was a point guard, but like where you have a bunch of role players around you and you're holding the ball and the ball's in your hand and that's it. And I think, he was almost drafted by the Nets. And I think there's an alternative universe where Kobe Bryant goes to the Nets with the 8th pick in 96. His teammates are Ed O'Bannon and Khalid Reeves and, a lot of Drek. And he starts his rookie year and he averages 22 a game, but he's shooting 33% and the team sucks. And there is an alternative universe. There really is, where Kobe Bryant is Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
If he's drafted by the wrong team and he just falls in love with shooting, and it's, he could have easily been that guy. People don't see that. He easily could have been that guy.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I think about John Starks, who was going to get hot because he was just going to keep shooting. And I'm not trying to say that Kobe's anywhere. Like, John Starks is not the player that Kobe was, but they are akin. And, John Starks would just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot until finally he made 5 in a row, and that meant he got hot or just average.
I honestly think the best thing that happened to Kobe, one of the best things, was he was wound up with the Lakers, and his first coach was Del Harris, and Del Harris severely limited his minutes, and Kobe hated it, but he limited his minutes his first year and gave him a little more the second, despite people saying, you need to play this kid, you need to play this kid. If Kobe had gone I'm telling you, if he had gone to the wrong situation, he easily could have been. He's much better than Starks, much more talented than Starks. But I know what you're saying. Like, he easily could have been a Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
Where he goes to a team, and he averages a ton of points, and everyone talks about him, but he's shooting 41%.
Yeah.
And he's an all-star every year, but there are a lot of first-round playoff exits. Like, people are like, the Mamba mentality. He worked his ass off. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But he was surrounded by really good players and really good coaches. And if he had gone to the Nets, Calipari would have been his coach. He would have eaten up Calipari. He would have been the most talented guy in that team, and it would have sucked. It would have been ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I mean, that work that he puts in, a lot of guys work hard in the NBA, but what lets him get to that next gear? Because I do think he sorts it out later in his career, where he figures out how to be a better player than he was when he was young and maybe didn't have all the speed and everything. What unlocks that potential for him?
I mean, he was really, really talented.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, look, I'm being serious. Like, if this goes overlooked, it's kind of weird that it does. He had the most dominant player in basketball as his teammate. Yeah. All right. So, again, he goes to the Nets. He starts as a rookie, starts playing well. He's double teamed right off the bat. Like, he was able to grow with those teams. And he also had these great veteran sage teammates who sort of were patient with him, where a lot of teams would not have been and would have found him annoying and, arrogant and dismissive and rude. And the Lakers were kind of patient with him. I don't know if he ever became a great teammate. I think he became a much more tolerable teammate. And I think Shaq leaving And suddenly Kobe's kind of the top dog, and he has good players around him, and the kind of Caron Butlers and the Lamar Odoms. I just think it was much more of a comfortable fit for him. He was able to be the top dog. But do I think he drastically improved as a player? I think he was always good. He just circumstances helped him. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I think Rick Fox, I think that's a great point. Rick Fox had always been, a player that was, he played on a great college team. He played on great pro teams. He just knew how to be, and also probably appreciated the fact that, hey, I get to be on the Lakers, just a perfect team. I get to be competitive. My wife gets to do, what I think he was still married. Yeah, he's still married he was still married to Vanessa Williams during that time.
Not now, though.
Right, not now. So, but that, wife is happy because she's in her environment, and he's like, it doesn't get much better than this. It's like, I got patience for days because I can't get a better position. And I think if you have those kind of, it makes sense to me that would happen with some of these teammates where this is a good position. Let me just get this guy. If my job is to get this guy the ball, take up minutes, get rebounds here and there, I do that.
Yeah, me too. Happy to do it. But it takes a special type,
Now, what about Jerry West? Because his ego matters, and if you make him mad, he can make your life uncomfortable.
Yeah, but he kind of knew what Kobe was. That's the thing. He knew what Kobe was, and he understood you have to be patient with Kobe. And he was very patient, and he really liked, he liked Kobe's exuberance. He liked Kobe's hard-nosed sort of determination, his doggedness. He was kind of a patient guy, Jerry West. Also Jerry West was a flawed guy. He knew, and he was in touch with his own flaws. So he knew his own sort of weirdness and his own sort of insecurities and difficulties. And guy's the best talent evaluator I feel like we've ever seen. I will say that. Yeah,
he knew to pick Kobe. and at the time when
he knew to trade for Kobe.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he knew to go get him, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
At the time, there were a lot of those failed 18-year-old players because Kevin Garnett came up and was like, oh, this is the model we can do. And then that one kid in the mid-'90s, he's like trying to commit suicide in the street because he can't handle the pressures of whatever he's going through in life. So it wasn't a sure thing that Kobe was going to become something.
No. There had never been a guard going straight from high school to the NBA. And a lot of talent evaluators were skeptical. How's this going to play? And is this guy's game going to translate? It's one thing to be playing against like Jimmy Schwartz in the, class, whatever Pennsylvania league, but Jimmy Schwartz and Bob Smith. And, these are just kids who are going to be doctors and lawyers and plumbers and whatever. And the idea of jumping to the NBA, it's hard to evaluate. Kevin Garnett was 6'11",
right, when
he came out of high school, 6'10". Code height you can evaluate. But nobody knew with Kobe. Nobody knew for sure. Yeah. But his workouts with the Lakers were so ridiculous that it kind of gave an inkling.
Yeah. They also picked Vlade, and I remember when they drafted Vlade, that the draft people laughed. They're like, "What the hell is a Vlade Divac?" And turned out.
Yeah, well, that was before. That was early in the sort of Europeanization of the NBA when people didn't know. And also, Vlade was kind of a funny case. He smoked half a pack of cigarettes a day, and he spoke no English, and he looked kind of funny. He had these long arms and his scraggly beard, and he came along and he was great. That's a overlooked all-time great draft pick right there, is Vlade Divac.
Yeah. First round, last pick, is that right? And they're like, yeah, we'll take this Yugoslavian guy.
Yeah, worked out well.
Yeah. Okay, so you learned some things along the way. What didn't make in the book? Which interview you're like, God, I wish I could make this fit, but it just doesn't work?
I don't really have any.
Huh.
I don't have a great answer. I've been asked that a bunch. I don't really have one. If something's good, I try to get it in.
Yeah.
There's some I like getting more into the backgrounds of players, obviously. And, there's some backstories I probably left on the cutting room floor. But generally, I'm a bad guy to ask that question. I get asked that question every book. I never have a good answer.
Okay. I'm never asking you that question again then.
Never ask that question again. I have a question for you. Why do you have the number 6 on your hat?
Oh, it's a company that does a augmented reality visor for pilots, and so the idea is that when you go up to become a fighter pilot, instead of having 2 jets in the air that take 2 crews, 2 jets, 2 everything, and one person's training on avoiding, you just put a virtual jet in the air, and then you have less chance for disaster and catastrophe. You're breaking less stuff, and then also like the first time you go up to fuel a fighter off of in the air. You can have practiced that virtually, but you're in the plane doing it, right? So it feels right. And so that's what these guys do, and they work out of the Santa Monica Airport. And
cool.
they're called Red 6. And it's a couple of Raptor pilots and Top Gun grads, and it's a really super I should get you up in their airplane. You'd love it. It's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Wait, I have a question for two.
Yeah.
Can I hijack your episode real quick?
Of course, you always can. Yeah, it's a conversation.
Let's play a game real quick. Are you at your work desk right now?
I'm in my tent. Yes, at the work.
Hey, what's the coolest thing you have on your desk? Let's have a contest. What do you got right there?
I have another Jeff. I have my buddy Jeff's book for screenwriting. I'm trying to work out a story thing, and I'm kind of stuck. And I always go to his book. That's the coolest thing on my desk. Everything else is pretty functional. What about you?
I got something great here. So I hang everything on my wall here, right? I have a wall of stuff. And I have right here, this is important because I just want to say I'm not always the best guy in the world. I have a get out of hell free card. So now it was by a religious group on a street, but I thought I should hold on to this just in case. If I end up in hell, I got the card and I'm good.
I love it. Well, that means, you get to do some crazy thing. There's this interesting...
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business, or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
Well, that means, you get to do some crazy thing. There's this interesting show I'm listening to on Audible. By the way, everybody should sign up through Audible on the link up breakitdownshow.com. But it's narrated by Michael Caine, and they've got like little interviews. It's a standard format you hear a lot, a little bit of music in the background, and it's about heists. And one of them happened down by you. One of the biggest heists of all time is a robbery of Laguna Niguel's bank.
Wow.
And it was like in the Nixon era, because apparently he had a bunch of his campaign money in this bank. And what broke the case ultimately was, and these guys were pro bank robbers. Like these guys, they would be in, be out, and they would be like, we know we got robbed, and that's where what we know stops. Couldn't find these guys. So they had rented an apartment across from the bank, and Laguna Niguel is not big. So it's easy to stand out there. And this is 50 years ago almost, that this happened. But they had wiped the entire apartment down that they had rented right across from the bank. So there were no fingerprints, none of that stuff. But they forgot to run the dishwasher on their way out the door.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and so they got caught. So these things are about heists. They're highly recommend them. I don't know if you listen to things at all, but that's super. Heists are fun because even though people get harmed in it, we just like the guy that gets away with $25 million. And they're like, we caught him. He did 6 years, but we don't know where $18 million went. So
I agree. I like that stuff.
Yeah.
Wait, I'll show you one more thing real quick. I have a sign that says, this is one of my favorite ones. It says, Jeff Pearlman regrets he would not be able to sign his books. And I did years and years ago, I won a sort of writing award. I don't remember what it was for exactly, in Westchester, New York. And they said, do you want to sign books at the thing? And I was like, I don't know, not really. It just seemed like it's always awkward. Book signings to me are very awkward experiences. Okay. So I said no. And then I show up and there are all these different authors and they're all signing. And the spot for me just says Jeff Pearlman regrets he would not be able to sign his books, which makes me seem like the biggest jackass ever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're too good to sign books, which it was the opposite. I was saying, I don't want to be this guy who's like an idiot signing books. So I've kept that sign. I love that I have a sign that says Jeff Pearlman regrets he would not be able to sign his
And
books.
do you still try to not sign books because you think it's, pretentious or whatever?
It's not bad. If people write me and say, can I get a signed book? I always say yes. But I'm just like, book signings are so awkward, and doing book events are really awkward. Like I had one, I did a book event when I wrote a book about the Cowboys years ago. And I did it at a Fort Hood military base. And my publicist was like, we have a great event for you. It's on the military base at Fort Hood. And I was in Dallas. You have to wake up early and drive there. And I thought this is going to be great. And I had this thing in my head, like a room, 40 soldiers. They're all given a free copy of the book. We talk about the Cowboys. Great time. No. I show up on Fort Hood. They have like a Walmart type store.
Yep.
They put me in front of the store and they literally put me at a table with a stack of books a mile high.
Yep.
Attention customers.
Uh-huh.
Jeff Pearlman is signing his book. I was there for 4 hours. 3 hours? 4 hours. I signed 3 books. 2 of them, I'm sure, were just sympathy signs. Like, oh, look at this poor sap sitting there. Nobody wants to buy his books. Midway through, I called my wife. I literally went under the desk and called my wife, and I was like, I need to get out of here. This is the most embarrassing thing ever. So I'm always, every writer, if you do this long enough, has an awkward book signing experience. And I've done it.
Yeah. That's funny. I've literally done that book signing. I don't know if you know Scott Husing. He's a friend of mine, and he wrote a book about Marines. And so we did one just south of where you're at, and at the PX, stood out in front, Christmas time, and just signed the hell out of books. And it was fun. And he was so busy, I had to help him. I'm like, okay, this.
Now you're just rubbing it in. You're just rubbing it in.
Yeah.
I just told you I got 3 signs, and this guy's
Yeah,
loading
he
it.
couldn't sell enough books.
Oh,
we'll have to bring you 2 together, and that way he can help you sell these books.
it's not worth it because that guy, I'll just bring him down. That guy's rolling. He'll be like, "Why did you bring this sap along?" So
yeah, you can hire Scott. Scott will be signing Jeff's books.
great.
In front of the Christmas tree display.
Great. I'm in.
Hey, I want to ask you about Shaq because we talked and beat up on Kobe a little bit. Why do we need to beat up on Shaq?
Beat up on Shaq. I love Shaq.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, there's negative things.
I think he's the best superstar teammate who's ever existed in sports. I really do. I think he's the best. This is a guy who, like, if a teammate needed a suit, he bought him a suit.
Mm-hmm.
If they were going out to dinner, he was always paying. If the teammate's father died, he was paying for the guy's funeral. If a teammate was making his NBA debut, he was flying in his family first class to come to the game. He's the best superstar teammate I've ever seen in my life. Did he have flaws? Yes. He had an ego. He was thin-skinned. He could get moody. He's basically human. But as far as great teammates, great superstar teammates, I don't think there's ever been. I used to think Brett Favre was the best superstar teammate I've ever written about. Yeah. I think Shaq is even better. I just think he's the best superstar teammate ever. And it's not fair necessarily to compare him to Kobe because Kobe was a lot younger and he was immature. And I think Shaq had a worldliness that Kobe did not have in a weird way because Kobe was raised in Italy. But I think Shaq had a sort of understanding of how people worked and how they thought and had a lot of empathy and understanding for people. So my criticisms of Shaq they're there, but they're very few.
And then it seems like, from my memories of that era, Shaq was like, I am the guy. No one's like, I'm the enforcer. I am the rock. And Kobe is my guy that's going to go out and take a lot of the work off my back. But when push and shove all come together, I am the man. I'm going to stand there. If someone knocks you down, I'm going to make him pay heavy.
He was a man. There's a fight between Rick Fox and Sacramento's Doug Christie, preseason game. And they get in a fight, and Shaq is actually out that game. He's nursing an injury. He's out that game. They get in a fight on the court. It goes off the court. They both end up in a runway, one of the runways off the court, in a fight. And who comes walking down, charging down? It's almost like when Andre the Giant would enter the ring. He comes charging down in his street clothes, and everyone just clears out.
Yeah.
And it was basically like, you don't mess with Shaq.
Yeah.
You do not mess with Shaquille O'Neal, ever.
I love it. Yeah, and he let you know. I mean, he had the Superman tattoo and all that stuff. He's a likable guy.
Very.
Were the rumors about his fitness during the Laker era true? Like, was he not willing to do that kind of work, or did he understand something about his body that we don't know? I mean, there was a lot of that kind of criticism of him. It
was a little of both. I think mainly his seasons were spent having the crap kicked out of him. He was double teamed all the time. He was double teamed by the strongest and biggest guys the other teams could throw at him.
Right.
His body was kind of beaten down by the end of the year. So when people be like, oh, this guy doesn't work hard. I mean, he got his ass kicked 82 games a year. And at the end of it, he wanted to sit in his pool and soak and eat cheeseburgers and smoke cigars. Now, one thing he did is he needed off-season surgery one year for his toe, and he didn't get it. He said, I'm not doing it during vacation time. And I thought that did not go over well, and it shouldn't have. But I think overall, it's a little unfair.
Where do you put Shaq in terms of the centers? I mean, it's hard to put Wilt in there because the game totally changed after him. But if you want to bring him in, but where is he at in the pantheon of centers?
It's got to be in the top 5. Yeah. I mean, I think Wilt, I think Russell, I think Olajuwon. If you think of Duncan as a center, I don't know if you count him as a center or power forward, but he's got it. I mean, certainly for the era, he was the most dominant big man of the era. Dominant, physically dominant. He's ahead of Ewing. He's ahead of Robinson.
Kareem?
Oh, I just forgot. Kareem to me is the greatest of all time. Kareem is the best basketball player I think of all time.
Okay.
But yeah, right after Kareem.
Okay. Just because Kareem was just so good for so long, or I mean, obviously he was brilliant, but he played forever.
He was the best high school player, I would say, who ever lived. He was the best, most dominant college player who ever lived. His NBA career was ridiculous.
Yeah.
People forget how good he was. I think people are unfair to big men. They judge big men in a different standard than guards. And I think Kareem was just ridiculously good.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. There was and actually when Shaq came up, they were talking about the era the big man was over. And then he started wrecking entire basketball stanchions, not even just breaking backboards. He's breaking the whole goddamn thing, you know?
I would say that he was the last era of dominant big men now. I mean,
okay.
If you think about it now, a guy like Shaq, I don't even know where. I always say this is my thing. You know, Taco Fall, the guy in the Celtics?
Yeah.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, definitely, Taco Fall was a top 3 NBA draft pick. He's probably number 1. You know, he's an athletic 7-footer with this wingspan. I mean, Sean Bradley went number 2 in the NBA draft, and I would say Taco Fall was a more talented Sean Bradley with a lot more potential. And Kyler Murray, who went number 1, obviously, in last year's NFL draft, is probably a 5th-round draft pick who, because they were a bunch of racists, is converted to defensive back because they didn't like blacks playing quarterback.
Right.
Now, Taco Fall is going to have a long European career. I mean, his NBA career is not going to be long. And Kyler Murray is the number 1 pick and looks like he's going to be a future MVP in this league. Like, times have just changed so dramatically that I would say Shaq, Hakeem, Duncan, it really was the last era. And maybe it'll come back one day, but a back to the basket, dominant big men where you play an inside-outside game.
When Andy and I were talking right before we got on together, we were talking about Kirk Gibson and his transition unexpectedly, you know, from probably number 1, you know, early first round, you know, NFL pick to a baseball player. Do you think Kyler Murray will regret? I mean, because football is hard. Quarterback is just brutal. I mean, there's been so many folks that have come out and it's just wrecked them. The transition's too hard. Do you think he should have taken the baseball money and the longer career with more brain intact later on?
Yeah, not for me to say. I don't know him. Maybe this is his joy. Maybe it's his dream of life.
Sure.
I mean, who am I to say? I don't.
Yeah. Hey, so what's next? I mean, I know everybody asks you that, but got to do it. So
I'm doing a Bo Jackson book next.
Oh,
So
thank God. I love it.
Yeah, me too.
He is our modern day Satchel Paige, you know, because there's all these apocryphal stories about him. Like he once threw a ball around a buffalo and caught it, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I agree. There's a lot of mythology there. That's what makes it. I always say if he had a 13-year major league career or a 10-year NFL career, he wouldn't be as interesting.
Yeah.
Like part of the whole thing is like what could have been. That's what makes it really fascinating. So I'm hardcore into Bo Jackson.
Yeah. I remember watching him play and just his first at bat. I mean, I know you know all these stories, but I'll just share this with the audience. He hits a home run down the line, first at bat, and it's like, I don't know if it's the first pitch or whatever, but he hits this rocket down the line and the umpire's like, I think it was foul ball. And so you're like, shoot, we were going to have this great beginning. The next thing he does, he hits a 2-hopper to second base and beats it out.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you're making George Brett's mouth open with how good you are. And, man, just such an incredible player. You know, those players that are so good. I remember King Griffey Jr. was doing things like this when he was younger. And everybody's like Jeffrey Leonard's like, hey, you can't do that, you know? And yet he did. Or Deion Sanders running with the ball in one hand. And I would you can't do that. But Deion could. These guys were special. And so I'm excited about that. Will you talk to Deion Sanders about Bo Jackson since they're peers?
I hope so. I think Deion Sanders hated my Cowboys book. So I don't know. Hopefully. I don't know though. You know?
Who do you want to talk to? I mean, obviously Bo, but who do you want to talk to besides Bo about Bo?
Oh man. I mean, there's so many guys. There's so many. My main thing is call everyone, you know. I'm up to about 250 interviews. It's been pretty detailed so far. Sadly, Pat Dye passed away as college coach earlier this year. That would have been really good. I don't know. I'm all about just calling everyone. I haven't gotten Marcus Allen yet. Would love to talk to Marcus Allen.
There's a picture of the two of them sitting on the bench, and you just look at that backfield, you know, and it's just, I'm like, wow.
They had 3 Heisman winners. They had Tim Brown also on that team. So you had 3 Heisman winners in the same offense.
Yeah, it's a remarkable era of football to have that, and then to have Al Davis be such a jerk to Marcus that, you know, like those two guys could have changed the game if they were able to play in the same backfield. It's obviously terrible that the hip thing takes Bo out, but also terrible that Al Davis couldn't get out of his own way long enough to let the magic happen, you know?
I agree.
Will you talk to any of Bo's track teammates? Because he was, this world class, not world class, but.
I mean, I'll try to.
Yeah.
I always talk to everyone, you know?
Yeah.
Deep dive, man.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I mean, do you have any questions for me? I don't want to keep you, but, I want to. So everybody should get Three-Ring Circus. There's a link on for Amazon right here on the screen. If you love the Lakers, if you love Shaq, if you love Kobe, if you love Jerry West, you want to learn more about Phil, it's all in there. And I will be getting it and reading it on Audible myself. So definitely, if you guys want to talk about that, let's do it. Jeff, when you're done with the next book in 2 years, hopefully, I would love to talk to you about Bo Jackson because I can't get enough.
I'm in.
There's a great story on SI Vault about how Bo Jackson swung around, just in practice, swung around one day and just batted left-handed and hit the longest ball in Kansas City.
Yeah.
He broke their workout Cybex machine back when Cybex machines were a thing. They're like, it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. His first major league home run was the longest home run in Royal Stadium history.
Yeah.
That's insane. In Kaufman Stadium. Yeah.
Ridiculous. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
All right.
Good talking to you.